So here we are for another episode of James Bond Will Return. This is episode 11, actually, of this series that we're enjoying at the moment. But before we proceed, I just want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you for either listening to us on your podcast or watching us on YouTube, wherever you are tuning in. We are grateful that you're joining in, and we encourage you to join in with the chat on our social channels as well, because, well, with the subject matter of this episode and this series, there are so many developments and so many things to talk about. So do join in with the chat, join in with the comments and your thoughts as we proceed with this series. This is episode 11, and as we're kind of finding out now, these episodes are coming a little bit thicker and faster. We've been going quite a while, but these last few now, things are really starting to kick on. So I'll not go right back to the beginning, but episode 8 was when we started a new era, and then because when Barbara and Michael G. Wilson stepped back, episode 9 was the new producers. So when David Heyman and Amy Pascal stepped in, episode 10 was when they announced that Denis Villeneuve is the director, and that brings us to this episode, which is the 11th episode, titled Stephen Knight. And I don't think we could have guessed that episode 11 would have been called Stephen Knight. Could we? I don't know. So yeah, we are kind of responding to the latest development that Bond 26, the next adventure, will be written by the writer Stephen Knight. And when I say we, and who's talking tonight, there are 5 of us. Brothers, I've got Matthew. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, thank you.
I just called you Matt then. I
Yeah,
don't
no.
think I don't know think I've ever done that.
Who was
Hello,
that
Tom.
guy?
Yeah, yeah,
Good evening, Harry.
yeah. And Tom can enjoy being in the guest seat rather than the hosting seat. And then we're joined by Chris.
Right.
Oh
All
yeah,
right, yeah,
yeah,
I get it.
relevant,
Oh,
relevant.
yeah.
Yeah, and also relevant, and not just because obviously Rob is a part of this podcast, but writer and author Rob Parker joining us tonight, which is
Yeah,
great.
sorry. Cheers.
It's great for you guys to be here. Just sad that John couldn't make it. As desperate as he just couldn't make the conversation. But I'm sure he's going to be sending in his video thoughts. You can look out for that in the episode a little bit further on. But yeah, this episode, the 11th episode, is all about Stephen Knight, following the news that he was unveiled as the official writer of Bond 26. A little bit like other announcements, it came out quite late at night UK time, sort of just as you're going to bed, and then you find out, and then you kind of, right, I won't be sleeping at all tonight, just full of excitement, thinking of what could be. This is a few days ago now. We've normally done these podcasts immediately following news, but we've kind of let this one just simmer for a while whilst we've kind of gathered our thoughts and maybe learnt a bit more about Stephen Knight to kind of hopefully give you not an expert conversation, but an informed chat about what we think Bond 26 might look like with him writing. So, like many episodes have done in the past, I will share a quote now. How it was, not how it was revealed actually, because it was only revealed in a very short statement, but it came on BBC Radio 5 Live Breakfast the following morning. That's when Stephen Knight gave us a quote of his own when he was interviewed about it. And I'm just going to read to you now what he said. It has always been on my bucket list, and it's fantastic to be invited to do it. I can't wait to get started. I'm hoping that, being a Bond fan for so many years, it will be imbued into me, and I'll be able to produce something that's the same, but different and better, stronger and bolder, he added. And then there was also part of the interview where he was asked whether he knew anything about the casting of James Bond himself. And when asked about it, Knight said, "That is a very, very good question, and one I can't give you the answer to. We might talk about that later. That was like a little bit of a side note." And then further in the interview, he's talked about the selection process, how he ended up being the chosen one. So speaking about his selection process for the latest film, Knight said, "I was invited to a meeting with producer Amy Pascal, didn't know what it was about, and very quickly discovered what it was about and became very, very excited and hopeful." And then a process is followed where you do some meetings, you discuss some ideas, and then you find out you've got it. So I found out a while ago, but it was announced last night, which is great. He agreed that it was a high pressure job, but said you've just got to do what you do it as well as you can. And that's as much as we've heard from him, really. But what we can do is obviously look to his body of work that we know already, and we'll come to that in a moment. But just to say, before we kind of dive into Stephen Knight's all the stuff that he's written, TV and film, I think this 11th episode, the writer, we've had the director and the producers, but in many, many ways, this could be the most important one, guys. I don't know what you think, but kind of what's come before and looking to where things I think needed to strengthen, things that have kind of taken it in a direction that's perhaps been divisive and not lapped up by everyone. It has actually been the writing, I would say. We've had some great directors in, and they've done, I think, to the best of their ability, those directors who've come in the recent Bond films have done their best, I would say. But I would say the writing was a contentious issue, and in the reviews we've done of the more recent films, a lot of our conversations did revolve around the quality of the writing. And then when we started to think about what Bond 26 might be like, and this was whilst we still thought it was in the hands of Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, we did put a lot of emphasis on the writing. So my first question, guys, to whoever wants to dive in first is, is this the most important selection when it comes to Bond 26? Is this the biggest development, would you say?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, like you say, I think with the script being, the blueprint for what direction they go in, and therefore how they cast it, how they put that project together, how it's, who the cinematographer, all that is the starting point is the screenplay. So I think, obviously having a director in place is important, but that screenplay is the first step, I think, when it actually comes to what production is going to look like, and that's when you start making those creative decisions, really, in terms of story, plot, what characters you do include, which characters you don't include, and I think, yeah, and I think we do, obviously with him, I think it's a really good choice.
Couldn't agree more with that and the importance of this. I think when you look at films in the past that haven't quite made the grade, or that they've not gone down critically as well, a good script might have been there in the first place, but it's been fumbled in its execution. You very, very rarely find a film with a bad script that's actually really good. It's very hard to pull that off. The other way round, if you know what I mean. So to get a good script, I think for any movie to be successful is so important. So yeah, the appointment of the writer is absolutely crucial. And I think considering where they are in the production of this film, i.e., new production team, new producers, a whole new era for the franchise. Who you get in as a writer is going to be such an important move. I actually think, to echo Chris there and to jump one foot forward, I think they've smashed out the park here. I think this is a brilliant choice. Someone with oodles of present day pedigree, but also, there's this concern, oh, it's going to be Americanized, or it's going to be, it's going to be dumbed down, or, well, I'm sorry, it won't be. It actually won't be with this guy writing the thing. And it's just great. I think it's great.
What you said about the stuff we didn't know what was going on before the takeover. I'm sure Michael told someone at some event, "Oh, Purvis and Wade are working on something."
That's
So,
right.
you know, even though that in the past would have been, "Oh, right, at least something's happening." That's the elephant in the room, isn't it? This surely means Rob, no more. I know they have done some good, but with all these things, they've had more than a good run. They were doing the same thing over and over again. The better ones were the ones where they were either having to rely on the Fleming, Paul Haggis, Butterworths, all these sort of people. When they're on their own, I'm sorry, but they've been nowhere near good enough. And I think it's so refreshing that even though Amazon have got it, and Pascal and Heyman have got it. And okay, we can talk about where Villeneuve came in. Was he before or the same time, or did they have the same vision? But the fact that none of them have sort of just gone back to what do we know or what do they used to do? No, let's go fresh eyes and everything, which is what I said would happen. And I think just the fact that, yeah, I even think the way that these stories are coming out is really interesting and says a lot about the mean business. I don't think they'll be doing a big unveil of anything until it's all gearing up. Have you noticed? It's all going to gear up to Bond. And
Yeah,
I'd say it was more likely than not that they already know who James Bond is, I'd say.
yeah. I mean, you're right. So kind of the way this news is coming out has been interesting. Making reference to Purvis and Wade there, like they have nearly it's been nearly 30 years that they've had the honor of writing James Bond films, which is they've had a very, very good run. They have been a very consistent voice in the direction of Bond that we know. Even for us growing up, almost, although not quite, but they've been the writers for most of our lifetime of Bond films coming out, if you know what I mean, of new films coming out. So, I mean, just focus on that just for one more moment, Math. Not so much to do with Stephen Knight, but the fact that this is a completely clean slate, isn't it? It seems to be. I like Tom says, I can't think that Purvis and Wade will be involved at this stage. So really, how we've talked about the importance of writing, but what getting new writers, that actual decision by Amazon, by Pascal and Heyman to say, no, we're getting new writers. That's quite a big thing, isn't it, wouldn't you say?
It is a big thing, but I think it's an absolutely brilliant thing, and I can't tell you how excited. I think every day I get a bit more excited about this whole, the new film and the new era and everything because I've never known such such a time as this. Sorry, it's a quote from the Bible. Like this is unprecedented where we are now in terms of Bond. And this is not meant to decry Eon or Barbara Broccoli, Michael G. Wilson, incredible servants, carrying on that family legacy, putting hit after hit after hit out. And also included in that are Purvis and Wade. But I think the time came where it needed freshening up. But I never thought it would be freshened up to this extent. When we were talking originally about Bond 26, we still assumed it would be Eon. We still thought there was a high chance Purvis and Wade might be involved. Um, Even if they gave it to someone like Danny Boyle to begin with, they then go back to Purvis and Wade, and thinking about just everything now, you can dream a bit bigger. You can, almost anything is possible. Um, I know these sound like campaign speech sound bites or something but I'm just so incredibly excited. A writer is still underrated in where people, your average person won't know many film screenwriters. They might more likely, and this actually does link into Stephen Knight. They might more likely know TV writers, in fact,
Yeah.
um, and they know directors. So but I absolutely, Tom touched on it before. I love the way that this news is coming out because we hadn't heard any rumours about Stephen Knight being involved. And it sounds like it's been in the pipeline for months. That hadn't got out. The fact that, him and Villeneuve, I don't think they've worked together before or anything like that. It's just this whole brilliant new um, kind of melting pot, as Brent would say, that it is, and just it is like anything is possible, and we'll come on to it because I honestly feel that this is the most exciting with the most potential, and they might not get everything right, and things might not go as swimmingly as we hope, but at this point in time, this is about as exciting and as fresh and new and re-energized as the Bond franchise has probably ever been.
Yeah, I agree. It is a huge moment, and we kind of when Amazon, even when the producers were named Heyman and Pascal, we thought, yeah, this is definitely a new era. Things are going to be looking a bit different. But with each announcement that comes, it does feel that it's getting newer and newer and further away from what we knew, uh, which is for me, an exciting thing, something to embrace. And I was going to kind of progress the conversation, but I think it's really important to talk about what you and Tom, Matt and Tom have just talked about there in terms of this, the way things are being unveiled. This suggests, Tom's kind of suggested that maybe they've got all the ducks in a row now and they're going to go ahead with it. And the interesting thing within this quote as well is that, or this quote from Stephen Knight himself, is that he suggests he was invited. So we've got this situation where the rumours, when it came to the director, there were rumours that other directors had pitched for it. So people had actually come forward. They wanted the gig, they came for it. Whereas the process here, from what we can gather, is that Amy Pascal specifically, who he mentions, invited him. And I don't know if that means with other people, with other potential writers, or whether he is their number one. Um, so this process, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. There's stuff that's probably already gone on. Pascal himself has said that it was done a long time ago. It's only just been revealed now, and then he's a little bit coy when it comes to talking about the next Bond. So I think you're right to say that things are really ticking along in the background. Did you want to say something, Tom? Did you?
I just,
Yeah,
yeah, just to become George Savvy for a bit and compare it again to, Lucasfilm. If you remember, it was all done. You didn't really hear anything, and then there was that famous photo, wasn't there, of all of them in the room, which
yeah,
is basically, an up middle finger to George Lucas because you've got everyone, all the actors, Lawrence Kasdan, everyone apart from you, and they could have done. Just think they could have said, "Oh, wow," you know, a bit like they must have done with the producers then. Okay, we've got rid of George Lucas, we've got rid of Barbara, but Purvis and Wade, actually, we just get them involved because they've done some of them before. So there was that possibility that they could have retained the writing team just to give them a head start or whatever.
yeah,
So I didn't think they would, but it doesn't feel pretentious, does it? This it doesn't. It's just coming out drip by drip, but you can tell they knew about this long before, and this whole inviting to a meeting. Yes, it might have been, but even before Denis Villeneuve was confirmed, it might have been. Look, just tell us what your ideas are. We're meeting all these people all the time. We're not going to choose a director, then a writer. I bet there's a lot of overlap with this.
mhm.
And then I'm sure let's come together and this is the direction we're going in. And don't forget Villeneuve. Does it say one of the things he might go on to become an executive producer, or he is an executive producer for this, but it sounds like he's going to be involved a bit more. So yeah, it'll be interesting to know what this vision is because I do think it sounds like they've got a plan now.
Yeah. Even though the things are being revealed to us, being drip fed one thing at a time. I don't think they're making one decision, then another decision, then another. All, like you say, it's a fusion of, and there's obviously lots of things going on at the same time that have perhaps been all tied up and sorted than just releasing the news bit by bit. It was probably time just for us to have a look at the man himself, Stephen Knight, in terms of all his writing credits. And it goes way back to the early 90s, maybe before, but it's really risen in the last 15, 20 years, I'd say. His name's become a little bit more notable. And he is known for writing TV and film. So he's not just a TV writer, he's not just a film writer, he's someone who's done both. He's dabbled with a bit of directing as well. I mean, the most notable things, which is quite strange when you really go back to his beginnings, were he was the person who devised the game show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which when you look at the rest of his credits, that's totally out of place. Which is it's like a real one-off. But even Matt and Tom, he's responsible for The Detectives, which we used to watch as children with mum and dad, which was a comedy in the early 90s. I think got it on DVD as well, so I might have to go back and kind of look for traces of Bond, the ultimate detectives. Yeah. Um, but then, yeah, he's obviously gathered a lot of momentum. His name's grown and grown and grown. And perhaps he's best known for his name being attached as the writer and the creator of Peaky Blinders, which was a TV show that went for many years and is culminating now with a film being made. And as well as it being that, it was a bit of a cultural thing as well. It really took over, certainly our country here in England, where you'd have people dressing up in a certain way. There are people who became really fanatical about the world of Peaky Blinders that he is responsible for. And then latterly, he's got the SAS Rogue Heroes, that's been a BBC thing, which is great. And I mean, it is worth looking through his catalogue. And then on the flip side, there are the most noticeable films that he's been involved with were Dirty Pretty Things, Lock, and Eastern Promises and Serenity. These are big names, big titles. And on the whole, critically, it's been very favourable. There've been some, perhaps when it's come to him directing, where it's not quite been as well regarded, but as a writer, he is seen as a strong name. Now, admittedly, I've not seen all the stuff that he's written. I mean, as soon as this news came out, it was that moment where I thought, right, why have I never watched Peaky Blinders? I've got to watch Peaky Blinders now. It seems like I'm the only one in the world who hasn't seen it. So I've knuckled down to watch a couple of episodes. I've watched that SAS one as well. And I'm going to start doing my homework, watching. But already I'm seeing a bit of variety in what he comes up with. There are common themes and things that you can draw comparisons with, but there's a lot of variety in his work. What do you guys know of Stephen Knight, would you say? Is there anyone who's uh,
Well, when I first
knowledgeable?
heard the news, because it was quite late at night, wasn't it, as you say? I thought it was Stephen Brill, Little Nicky and the heavyweights and Mighty Ducks. So I was,
Yes.
what? That's
Oh,
a strange choice, and then like, oh, Stephen Knight, and then I must admit as well, I'm of the same thing. Like, I'm not totally familiar with everything, mainly because I don't get to ever get the chance to watch a lot of television, so I'm really, really picky about what television I watch. But the not for any reason other than just not because of any snobbishness. It's just don't have a lot of the time to devote to series,
Mm.
so I have to really pick those carefully. But I have really enjoyed Peaky Blinders, and where Peaky Blinders is concerned, you're absolutely right, Harry. He's created a phenomenon with that. Like he bought that era, he gave that era and those stories an entire look and feel of their own that people wanted to tap into and be part of. And like ostensibly, you absolutely shouldn't want to be any of those people, but you do,
Yeah.
because Stephen Knight wrote the heck out of that thing, and the production team behind it made it all look extremely cool. And he's got to recreate this phenomenon now, and he's got form at that. He's got form of creating um, a uniquely British phenomenon on television. So that again adds what a great choice this is. Um, I know it's been said many, many times, but like I think most people growing up wanted to be James Bond. For me, that stopped. Well, it should have stopped when I grew up. but
yeah.
like I didn't. You couldn't pay me. I know to be Bond of the last, however many films. But we need to go back to that, don't we? We want people to we want this hero to be reinvented as the hero that we want to get behind and root for. And he made that out of a band of utter scumbags, so this should be easy.
Mm.
But like, so I again think it's totally great. Like you said, absolute variety alongside everywhere there. Like game shows and wide ranging films with different loads and loads of different like cultural touchstone points in them. Like Eastern Promises is so unique as a film. But I thought it was a great movie. And then oh, you forgot Auntie's Bloomers. He wrote
Yes.
some,
Yeah.
wrote
Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
for Auntie's Bloomers.
Yeah.
So yeah, real variety, and obviously shows he can bring some humour to proceedings, which of course with Bond is completely key. But he'll bring a real sense of a real present day film make and television production sensibility to things. Yeah, it's just it's very, very exciting, and it will be British. This is something that you see through that. You don't get much more British than SAS Rogue Heroes or whatever it's called. It's uniquely British. And for all these, there's people who said that Bond is going to lose its Britishness or going to lose its soul or anything like that. I really hope they feel a little bit silly now for getting so upset about it when Amazon took over. I mean, obviously, I understand when a big business takes over, that's not a domestic big business, that it might, you might think, they won't understand the Britishness, for example, in this. They won't understand why the Britishness is such a important part of James Bond. Well, I'm afraid they do get it, and they're making appointments to suggest that, So yeah, another big two thumbs up from me.
Yeah, because he obviously he himself is British, but things like Peaky Blinders and SA, they are, like you've mentioned, extremely British and rooted in British culture. He himself actually is from Birmingham, where Peaky Blinders is set, so I think that's kind of close to his heart. And that reminds me that a good friend of the show, Steve Clamp, who is a newsreader in the kind of Birmingham area, central to our country, he has met Stephen Knight at least once. Is that right?
Yeah.
And has only good things to say about him as kind of obviously a writer, but also a local person who's doing his hometown proud.
Hey, really 007, Steve Clamp here, and I'm so sorry I couldn't join you for this podcast. Of all the podcasts I didn't want to miss, it was the one where we're talking about the new writer. I've always said the most important person for me to be announced for this film was the writer, and here we have it. Because at the end of the day, I know they'll cast a good actor to play James Bond. I knew they'd get a good director. They've done that. But you need a good writer. Without a good writer, you've got nothing. And we've got Stephen Knight, who is he's a genius. I'm not going to lie to you. He's also a proud Brummie. That's a nice touch. I've been lucky enough to meet Stephen a few times over the years. Most recently in June. I was chatting to him. I was interviewing him actually for ITV about the Peaky Blinders stage show at the time. But off camera, we were talking about various things, as you do while the camera crews are setting up. And it did get round to James Bond. No doubt I brought it round to James Bond. And I did notice at that point, he went a little bit quiet. And I thought, has he gone quiet because he just wants us to get a move on and get this interview done? So I kind of ushered the camera crews along a bit. And we did it. But I now think, well, he was probably keeping quiet because he was biting his lip because he didn't want to say anything ahead of this big announcement. He would have been in those meetings by then. I'm pretty sure of that. He talked also in that interview about his process of writing. So if you want to have a look at it, it's on ITVX. I think it was June the 11th. You'll find it. If you search him in ITVX, you'll find the interview pop up. The stuff about how his process works for writing is towards the end of it. Anyway, just a little thing for you if you want to have a look. But yeah, I mean, he's brilliant. SAS Rogue Heroes, I think, is one of the best things that's been on TV in recent years. I know a lot of people absolutely love Peaky Blinders, including my eldest daughter. So yeah, he has got great pedigree. I think with the experience that he's got, he's 65, which is, it's pretty much middle age these days, isn't it? But he's got the experience that he won't take any nonsense. If he's got a good vision and a great script, he won't let, producers and money men and directors and stuff veer him away from it, let them change it too much. Because I think it's really key that when a writer has a good script, he sticks to it. He is obviously going to have some flexibility. You don't make a film with this kind of money and not expect some input and some ideas. And of course, the set pieces will be probably woven into his script. He'll have the story and then they'll come up with these crazy set pieces they want to introduce and they'll find ways of weaving it in. But what I mean is the essence of the script. He needs to stick to that. And I think with the experience he's got, he won't be afraid to do exactly that. We also know he can create great characters, such memorable characters in all his programs. So he should write a good Bond. And he is a Bond fan. That's so important, isn't it? I know Amazon have had a lot of flack, people worried what they're going to do. I actually think Amazon are fully on board with not letting the fans down. I think because they know there could be a massive backlash, they're actually going the other way. They're trying to get the right people in, people who care about Bond, but also people who do have a vision for how to make really exciting drama in this day and age. So I'm trying not to go on too much, but I'm so pleased it's Stephen. He is a lovely guy. I've been very blessed to spend quite a bit of time in his company in the last few years. So yeah, I'm hoping to see him again in the not too distant future. I don't suppose he'll tell me too much about Bond, but I can always try, can't I? But I'm now so excited for this film. In fact, with him on board, I'm probably more excited about this Bond film than any Bond film since the last Pierce Brosnan one over 20 years ago. You may say, why wasn't I excited for Casino Royale? I was excited, but I just was a little bit annoyed at the way they'd got rid of Brosnan, because I thought Brosnan was such a great ambassador for the Bond franchise. And then Casino Royale was a very good film, but just not quite my kind of Bond. I'm hoping this is a bit closer to what I want from Bond. Yes, it's going to clearly have some gritty drama in it. It's going to have tension. That's all fine. I've got no problem with that. I just think it'll have characters who are more likeable than perhaps we've had in recent years. And I'm not talking about just Bond, but all the secondary characters, people you really are rooting for. You come out of the cinema wishing you are James Bond, or wishing you are one of those who are around him. No, I'm buzzing. Can you tell I'm buzzing? I'm really buzzing. This is great news. Stephen, you'll give us a great script. And Stephen, when I next see you, I will be badgering you for Bond answers, and I know you won't give them to me.
When you look at his filmography, it is interesting, but like Rob said, there is a very distinctively British, sort of everything sort of just come back to here. He has obviously made films, American films, international films, but he is always writing British films, British TV series. So I think that's like I say, that's a really big tick in terms of finding someone who understands the cultural significance of what it is to be British, as well as what it means to be British during those set period of times. Like obviously being British during the war is very different to being, what it is now. So I think he really does understand that, and I think that's really important when it comes to when you're tackling such an icon of British culture and literature and film. So I think he's a great choice. I think he's also really interesting, and I think he's, in terms of, like I said, Dirty Pretty Things, working with Stephen Frears, who again is like such a great cornerstone of British filmmaking. Someone again who's been working since the 70s, who has had a really eclectic kind of career himself, and then working with David Cronenberg, a Canadian filmmaker, but on something that's mostly set in the UK, and I think it's kind of, he's such a, I feel that he's just drawn to really interesting stories, and therefore and characters are often really obviously comes across as being really important. The fact that he wrote and directed a film with one cast member, so that's when the writer becomes incredibly important. So I think he obviously has confidence and he's able to tell a story really clearly and create characters that are memorable. I think it's really clear across his filmography that he's drawn to really interesting characters, and like you say, that there is always humor in that, and I think again that's another key thing here. He's a writer who finds humor in everything that he writes, even that he can be dealing with very dark kind of subject matters like in Dirty Pretty Things and Eastern Promises, and again, that I know that something like SAS Rogue Heroes has that kind of boys' own adventure kind of, it's like slightly split between that and trying to be a bit kind of serious, and then having kind of this kind of swagger, which obviously again kind of comes from sort of Peaky Blinders, but there's loads of humor in there, lots of black humor, lots of really good dialogue as well. I think he's a tremendous choice simply because he's had a lot of experience. He can clearly work at a high level for quite a long time. He's able to write series after series, and there's very rarely kind of a big drop off there. And again, being able to do a variety of genres in different countries, working with so many different people, I think again is really important. And I think if you make a success of this one, it'd be great to have him, someone who does stay on and writes maybe 2, 3, and really sets the standard. And then that's when you can have potentially other directors kind of stepping in. But he's sort of kind of set the direction of it and gets to continue. I'm not up for any kind of joined up, stories. I want standalone stories. And I think, hopefully he does understand, again, what you love to hear is that the fact that the people that they're choosing are, advocates for the series, the film, have a real kind of passion for it. And I think, again, that's just it's so important, not someone who's coming into this who thinks that, well, I can change this dramatically. That the quote saying, always being a Bond fan, this is something on kind of wish list, but being able to say, actually, let's just try and make this their own thing and not going, well, we'll just carry on what would happen before. And I think that's important, because I do think that, I think setting things up now is being able to have that where it's slightly different, but then actually definitely still Bond and everything that you expect.
That was like his quote, wasn't it? The same but different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's that should be applied to every next Bond adventure, shouldn't it? The same but bigger, or the same but we'll go into that quote. Matthew, I'm pretty sure you've watched Peaky Blinders. Am I right?
Yeah, you are right. I don't think I've actually watched it all. My former flatmate Harry Lord was a massive fan, and he introduced me to it. And I did like it, and I can see, I'm not the biggest fan, but I definitely think there's something about it, and there's something, should be quite proud of it as like a British thing that from 2013 to, is like a cultural thing, and that loads of people know and has its own identity and everything. And like each series has new characters introduced, and some of the actors that they've managed to get in are absolutely, top draw. Um, yeah, so and also whenever you try and write it on predictive text, it changes it to pesky blinders, which I always found quite.
Yeah.
Um, but I just want to say on Stephen Knight, what I really like is, and I don't want this to come across as like a negative thing, but even though he's got loads of critical acclaim and stuff like that, it's not as an out there appointment, or I think it's a more solid appointment than maybe some people may have thought. It's not. I know it's different because what they normally do is it's Purvis and Wade, and then they get an Oscar winner or something to come in, or a new quirkier person to come in and probably give it a polish, probably change a few characters, dialogue, that sort of thing, which may yet happen. There might be someone else or another couple of people who come in and do that, but you know you thought they might have gone. I know this sounds stupid, but like I know he was a writer director, but like the Honora, person, or I don't know, something a bit more out there, and then it's someone who's might be saying, well, I have seen some of the Bond films, but I'm going to be giving it a fresh take. Chris kind of said the same thing, so I really like that this is someone who says he loves Bond and who has a really, really solid body of work. I just think it's just a really, and as I said before, the fact that he's not worked with Denis Villeneuve before, it shows that this is they're looking at getting the best people in, and not like, perhaps you could argue that from one film to the next, it was getting a bit like, right, what do we do next? Who do we bring on board? Right, well, you can now come on board to do, I don't know, just felt a little bit more haphazard. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're only early stages, but I think this is a really interesting choice, but a really, really good choice. And I think because maybe some of the things are a bit grittier or whatever, that doesn't necessarily mean this is just going to be, dark and gloomy or anything like that. I think it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Go, Tom, have you how familiar are you with Stephen Knight's?
I mean, there's loads to say. I've just remembered, didn't Purvis and Wade write a similar SAS series or some kind of MI6 series? So underrated that. It was on the BBC. I'm aware of him, actually. This sounds really, really odd. I was originally aware of him, not obviously because of his credits, but I didn't know that was him. When you're watching Eastern Promises, I didn't know it was him until recently. But he's always on Talk Sport. He was on, with honestly with Alan Brazil. I remember him years ago talking about his love of. He's a Birmingham City fan, of course, and I think he's been involved with a documentary, since their takeover.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually the morning after this was announced, he was actually on the radio. I can't remember. I don't know whether it was Talksport, but he was talking about. I just caught the end of it. Didn't know who it was because I'd forgotten what his voice sounded like. Going about on and about Birmingham's situation and whether they are going to get all the way up to the Premier League again. And then the interview like, and great news, well done on the James Bond gig, Stephen. Oh, thank you, mate. And that was
Oh, wow.
oh God, what have I missed? At the beginning, but he's always been on the radio, and I think I'm with Matt. I can't believe he's not been mentioned. And
Yeah.
the reason he hasn't been, I think, is absolutely because he's not all the. Again, I always seem to be slagging off Bond fans. I'm not really, but Villeneuve is one of those names which always came up. Not because he's someone who you'd think would be associated, just because he's a very big name. A bit like Glenn Powell for Felix, that sort of that sort of thinking that he's about 30, in his 30s, he's American, all right, like, he's famous, that kind of thinking. Writers, there would have been, like Matt says, far more obvious choices for if you look at some of the other franchises, they've got in. Like Taika Waititi doing a Star Wars film, that kind of thing. Yes, they've got loads more films to be getting on with than the Bonds at the moment, so there are more options. But to get in somebody like him, who he's a decent bloke, for one thing, he's a really chatty bloke. I can picture him. This is really sad, in years to come, doing Bond events, talking about his time on the Bond series when he's retired and stuff, like in the manner of John Glenn. I mean, we're getting so far ahead and excited here. But yeah, I do think it takes a step back, this appointment. I think it really makes you think, yeah, they're not just doing this for sort of like kudos and let's get, well, said we get the best in class. Keep saying that, but yeah, this is based on his record, not a name. And you can't get somebody more experienced than this bloke. I can't believe every time you keep looking at his filmography, you remember another one, and then I forget that it was him. I mean, we've mentioned obviously the early, forgot of course, Detectives was in Birmingham, wasn't it? You had. I don't even know whether Robert Powell is from Birmingham.
Not Glenn Powell, but yeah.
Yeah. Jasper Carrot, yeah, all that sort of stuff. Fantastic. But yeah, I mean, with a record that huge, there are obviously going to be some ones you don't like and some ones that are not as good. I mean, I wasn't a massive fan of Locke, to be honest. I'll give it another go, but I'm not as keen on one take sort of Sam Mendes things as that. And Serenity was funnier and more interesting than it got anyway. But yeah, there's loads of stuff that he's done that has not heard anyone mention, of course. Like Amazing Grace, he wrote that, which was, of course, Michael Apted directed. David Arnold scored. No one will mention that, but that's an underrated film that's worth closer inspection. Certainly, Allied, which I've gone on and on and on about, the Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard war thriller. So it's not Bond because it's not like an action adventure, but it's really well written. People slag it off. He writes the kind of films that I like, and they're criticised for the writing. That's his oeuvre. So I heard on the radio they were doing TV reviews, and because he's got so many hundreds of TV stuff out at the moment, I think it came out a year ago. Is it called The Veil with Elizabeth Moss?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Oh, it's really, really good. It's just the writing's rubbish, this. So, none of them realizing that this is the guy who just. Why don't you say it's Stephen Knight who's done anyway? But then again, Peaky Blinders he'll always get praise. So he's done, like I say, he's done so much stuff, so much variety that it's exactly who you want on board. Not someone who's flash in the pan. He or she has done one or two good, successful things, and then he's hot right now. Let's get him in. This is a proper like Ron Howard type, appointment, isn't it? It really is. And I've got to mention the 100-Foot Journey. I know no one will have seen it, but absolutely brilliant family film. Definitely worth seeing. No one will see it as revision for Bond, but Helen Mirren and like a movie as a chef with an Indian family. Absolutely brilliant. Really, really, really unexpected. There's no way I knew that was Stephen Knight, so I looked, years later. I think it was Lassie Hallstrom actually, who's of course Chocolat, Harchie. These are the great works, aren't they? So yeah, I think the fact that that's the variety. So look beyond the gritty. He can do far more than that. He's done comedy series, quiz show,
Sci-fi.
sci-fi. Yeah, no spoilers with Serenity, but yeah. So I just think it's a real back down to earth, nuts and bolts. He's gonna take this on properly and really enjoy it as well.
That's it. I mean, funnily enough, you've kind of hinted at it a moment ago. Like, I was thinking about all the ideas we had for Bond 26, the speculating we did about certain names. And with each announcement, it's building this team. And this team that you mentioned it seems solid. It's not loose parts, loose cannons trying to be put together or anything like that. Like, I was thinking, of other combinations that in another world, you might have had like Taika Waititi's working with Harlan Coben to write. It's like this that they are not solid people who understand Bond, who are standing the test of time. Do you know what I mean? You've got two people now, kind of when we think of Villeneuve and Stephen Knight, where they do feel strong and reliable. And like Tom said, it's because Stephen Knight's been going for so long and done so much that, of course, there are going to be some that aren't
Yeah,
the perfect hit, because obviously he'll be wanting to be ambitious or take risks here and now, but also the critics will become aware of his name, and that he's been around long enough that you can treat him in a slightly different way to these smaller time writers, if we call them that, which is a great thing. And I just see it as a strong team that's building now. And the quote talks about Villeneuve, and there's an article, sorry, there's no quote, I think, but it talks about Villeneuve and Knight having met in person, and that's once they'd met in person, that meant it was confirmation, time to green light it, kind of. But I suppose you guys, if we talk about the role of a writer in projects like this, how far do you think Stephen Knight's idea will be? Is he someone who's going to plant the idea and then he stops after a certain point, and then do you think more people are going to jump in? Are they going to be consultants? Are they going to get some outside inspiration from the novels, or do you think the sole power now? These are the two most powerful people in terms of Villeneuve directing and Knight writing. Do you think these are the two key people, or do you think Knight's influence is for this inception of an idea, and then it's going to it's going to evolve from that moment on?
Again, you look at what Stephen Knight has done in the past. They're all very quite original stories. How many TV series has he created? I think he is very much. I can't imagine him adapting something else for this. I think this is very much going to be his idea, and it will be original. And I think that he's smart enough to have read the books and to have seen the films and understand the whole kind of spectrum of what the Bond kind of universe entails. And I think he'll apply that. I think he comes across as a really smart guy who sort of understands how to tell a story. And I think he will choose an original story. I just cannot imagine you would hire someone with his experience to potentially pass that on to someone else, which which has happened plenty of times in the
Yeah.
past with Bond films. And there could be an argument that was obviously where the results have been mixed in the past. But I think that I also don't sort of see Villeneuve as a director who would want to bring in other writers. I imagine he's someone who would sit and work with that writer to get it right, and he would work with them to shape it to his vision. Can't imagine saying, right, okay, Stephen, we're going to get Purvis and Wade to come in because I think this character really needs filling out and really needs some great dialogue here, guys.
Yeah.
I just cannot see that happening at all.
I think the dynamic has changed completely, because it was always taken as a given that Purvis and Wade were there. They were going to be always involved
Like
in some
staff
part.
writers, just there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And then kind of fairly casually, new writers would just be added on top, and then with No Time to Die, pretty late in the day, you're adding a new writer or someone else to kind of tinker with it. I can't imagine the way that they seem to be the way that Heyman and Pascal seem to be organising themselves. I can't imagine that they're going to reveal this news about who the writer is, and then further down the line say, and now we've got someone else, and we're going to get this person to join them because this person's hip right now. Although it's quite common in films that there will be multiple writers, I think there's something in the fact that they have announced at the birth of this film, they've announced who the writer is, and that's not something that Bond films have done for many, many years. Although Matt, you did mention that or you suggested that he might not be the only writer, or others might join later on. I know there's no way of knowing, but do you think do you think that's possible, and is that something that?
Well, as Chris says, it might not be. It might be that Villeneuve maybe either does some uncredited or some, sort of does some of the writing working with him once he becomes more involved. As in, because obviously Villeneuve is doing, I think that's the other thing to mention, that they've obviously not waited for, this is going on now. He'll be writing it now. It won't be waiting until June has come out or anything like that. We're cooking. It might be that they bring someone on. It does seem quite odd to ever see just one person, written by, or it might be story by Stephen Knight, screenplay by Stephen Knight and someone or something like that. I don't know. But it is clear, as you've said, this is a big thing. He'll be coming up with a story, I imagine. I mean, they might have discussed ideas and everything, but he's the one who's going to be writing what happens. And then if anyone else were to come in, it would only be, not to the same degree and everything. So yeah, this is, and yeah, as you say, the way that it's been announced, it's not like he's just some co-writer who's coming in to do a day, a day's work and stuff. This is his role. It's a big responsibility, but an incredibly exciting one for him.
Yeah, I think that this is everything that we're seeing at the moment has a layer of also like a sheen of it's very businesslike, it's down to business and it's classy with it as well. We're making really good appointments in an unflashy way, and we're clearly thinking about this very seriously about relaunching James Bond as, it really feels like this isn't putting a cherry on, this franchise to sail it off into the sunset. This is cementing it for the future as well. This is reinvigorating it for the next 25 films. That's what this feels like. They're taking this that seriously and seeing this as a complete chance to overhaul and go into a new direction. And also, there's a whole, what's being exhibited. It seems clearly a whole different way of doing business. Like we don't know anything about what the new film is about. Quite rightly, but they've probably got the barest of bones at the moment. But I don't know. But I dare say they're a bit further on than we think they are. I
Mm.
think things, I think we've got some really exciting times ahead, and I think we'll end up with an announcement soon with the casting. I really do. I think we're going to get there quite quickly. Because if I was writing something like this, something where, well, actually, I don't know. There's probably two arguments to this. Would you want to know who's going to fill the role of the main character,
I was
or
going to
do
ask
you
you this
try and
later, Rob. Yeah, this is an interesting point.
yeah, do you want to know that, or do you want to so you can cater the script to that person's strengths? I think there's huge mileage in doing that. Or do you want to go, no, 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 we're gonna get the story down and establish the character on the page and then entrust the actor to bring that to life? There's arguments for both sides there. Either way, they're going about it. They're not saying things like, this is going to be James Bond as you've never seen him. He's going to be a grown-up James Bond or anything like that. He's going to be, a James Bond that's sensitive or anything like that. It seems like their actions are going to be let to do the talking here, which is really, really exciting. And it also gives that feeling that we really could see anything in the coming days. We really could see an announcement
Yeah.
tomorrow or whatever. I don't think we will, because I think we had the Pascal and Heyman announcement, and then we had maybe a month or two, was it something like that? And then we've got Villeneuve, and then we had sort of 6 weeks ish, and then we've got this. So I would expect sort of September time, possibly, a major announcement. I don't know. That's if they're following some schedule I've just conjured in my head. But also, I think they might surprise us all. I mean, I know this isn't really talking about the writer here, and this is going further on, but I think they might announce. They might announce with some footage. There's always the chance of that, which would just have us all in pieces, I would imagine. But also, I think, another piece that I think will be very crucial that we might see next is who's going to do the score. Now, I think the score is a different one, though, because you don't necessarily need to know that so early on in the creation of a project like this, I don't think. And the composer and his orchestra can be miles away. They can never meet. They just, the way that, real-time internet connection works now and all that kind of stuff. There's at a time there's no need for, like Steven Spielberg to go and spend the day with the orchestra with John Williams or whatever, like you just don't need to do that anymore. So it's super exciting, but everything that's happening seems so classy, so businesslike, and everything that I wanted to happen. It's actually for me feeling like the franchise was dead, like absolutely dead, and that nothing was ever going to happen, and that I might as well start remembering what all the things that I enjoyed about it. I'm just really excited again, and I didn't think it was possible. I really didn't think it could come back, but it is, and it's here. And I think this is just a great appointment. The writer is crucial, like we said, and these people like Villeneuve, like Pascal and Heyman, and now Stephen Knight. I nearly said Stephen Brill again there. Really nearly did. They can put their authority and stamp over all of this now, and they're saying all the right things as well.
Yeah.
That's another thing. They're conducting themselves in a way that makes me excited and proud, but they also sound proud to be involved with this, which I don't, there's been a scarcity of that recently. So it's wonderful.
Maybe it's not linked enough to what we're talking about, but it's just sort of what I was saying before. We're in an unbelievably unprecedented position with there being, and again, I'm not meaning this to be totally disrespectful or whatever, but no Broccoli or Wilson or whatever. A Bond film has never been done by somebody outside. So I'm trying to prepare myself, and I hope again this might be a bit different, and it might. So what I previously said, oh, I hope they do this, I hope they do that, and a lot of it is the same, but was thinking that this would be an Eon Bond film and bearing in mind where we've been before and all that. But the slate is cleaner now. Whilst I do want there to be fun and everything, I think we're now. It's going to be. It's hard to explain, but basically it is this whole thing of anything is possible, and even the cast and who knows? It's not. It's going to be different. Everything's going to be different than it was before, and I do think that is not only is it exciting, but I do think it's needed, and I think I honestly think this has the potential to be an absolutely massive film, like super hit, monster hit. People, anticipating it, trailer being one of the most because I think, and I might be wrong about this. Skyfall, absolutely massive hit. Spectre, still a decent hit. No Time to Die, there was COVID and everything like that, and they're always big hits. But perhaps it's not fully reached what it could potentially get to. And I know it's not. We're not just bothered about box office numbers, but I'm talking about Bond being part of the cultural zeitgeist, as Steve Coogan would say, and it being a huge moment. And yeah, I honestly feel maybe I'm getting a bit too ahead of myself here, but I honestly can't contain my kind of excitement, and it is that the whole thing of this just being new territory,
Yeah.
unprecedented waters.
I agree. Like as the evolution of Bond 26 has happened. Originally, when it was in Eon's hands, I was, we had the non-negotiables episode where we thought, please just get us back to these days, these days of comfort. But the sling, the more cleaner this slate's becoming, the more I'm realizing it will be a new direction, a grand refresh kind of, and that that is it's pretty mysterious and exciting, and you don't know what you're going to get. And at the moment, I'm trying to embrace it all completely with absolute optimism and positivity. I wouldn't have expected, I couldn't have called these two appointments or any of them, the producers, the director, and the writers, all the speculating we've done on this podcast. They're on a slightly different wavelength to us, which I'm pleased about. I'm glad that we can't predict. It feels very, very exciting. And going back to what we have so far, for me, there also seems to be there was this suggestion that Stephen Knight couldn't be officially unveiled, or they didn't officially unveil him until he'd met Villeneuve. So for me, it seems like there's a bit of harmony here, even though you've got these different parts. There is this harmony, and I'm not necessarily talking about them getting along as people. I mean, I hope they do, and they might do. But it seems that these appointments must have been made because Pascal, Heyman, Villeneuve, and Knight, there must be a vision that they share, as in that there must be a core vision that they can all get on board with. That's where there must be, because ordinarily Villeneuve and Knight haven't worked together. These people, none of these people have worked together before. But the thing that must give them faith that they can make this work is that they all share a very, very similar vision, whatever that vision is. And we don't know if Villeneuve's on for more than one film. We don't know if Knight's for more than one film. Is it more likely that whatever this vision is, as compared to Villeneuve, is it more likely that Knight would be, do you think, the writer for more than one? Obviously, he's more used to doing episodic TV stuff, so he's obviously used to having maybe a bigger picture split into parts, kind of. But Tom, do you think there's more chance of a writer staying on board longer than a director?
We don't. It's a rubbish answer. We don't know at the moment.
No.
But to link it back to what you guys have been saying, when you've had all this speculation over the 4 years, and when it was Eon running everything, if anyone suggested something slightly different, like, oh, I think they've already chosen Bond, like it was always, oh no, they choose a director first, and oh no, they do this, oh no, no, and people are still, including ourselves, you're still thinking along that way. So when Rob said, that we might get the composer announced, the traditional thinking is, well, recently Eon, it's almost an afterthought, isn't it, at the end? And obviously when we had David Arnold, he was already there. But then it's been, oh well, Thomas New, you can bring him in, and then Hans Zimmer was sort of a last minute appointment. With this though, the learning, of course, from what's been going on in the Bond world, but they're also learning from the Marvel world, the Star Wars world, the DC universe. So I think they'll be learning how do we market this as well. So how do we bring out these elements and get people excited? This is what I'd be doing. How do we get people excited with an unknown sort of thing? Who are you trying to get on board? Well, you want people at the moment. The doubters are the people who wanted it. They said it would be loads of spin-offs, Americanized, not on cinema. Well, these three things have completely, that's gone now. So that criticism, I keep saying it, the producers who've almost in the background now, but American woman and an English man. No one, I keep saying that. It's the same as Barbara and Michael producing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think if you are Amazon, you're thinking, how can we market unveiling the James Bond? Because it's the set. If you ask Carl Brain who's writing, who's directing, you probably couldn't care less. It's, well, does this? It's just, oh right. So does that mean we know when's Bond come? That means it's going to be quicker now. That's what the general public are interested in. Yes, a few film fans will be, interested that Denis Villeneuve. Whoa, that's a big name, but the general public aren't. Still not interested yet. So I think they're gearing up towards this big announcement. And I can't remember, it was Rob who said, I think they might, if it was you, of course you'd do it like the Pierce Brosnan one. Of course you would. It'd be stupid. not just some sort of like press conference or something or a little photo. I think it's got to be an advert that comes out. You know, the problem with Eon, it was quite everything was getting leaked all the time. So as long as they can try and avoid that, can you imagine that? And none of these things have been leaked so far. I mean, Stephen Knight he saw Steve Clamp the other day, I think, recently, and of course he couldn't say anything, but he'll have known about this for months, I think. I think they'll have known about most of these things for months. This is just the order that they're telling you what's happening. And I think I agree, Rob. An advert with James Bond unveiled. Hope Super Bowl's too far in advance, but yeah. I think
Yeah.
in the next month or two you'll get a bit more. Maybe location, maybe something like that. I don't know. Some kind of, and we've got the Amazon Road to a Million as well in between.
Everything
But
becomes
there
so
might be an
exciting.
advert
Yeah,
to sell that. There might be something, a clue in that. I don't know.
I know we're not, we've kind of almost argued against this, but I remember when Blade Runner 2049 was, it was early on that Denis Villeneuve was doing it. I remember it being announced maybe just on Empire or something like that, that he'd brought in Roger Deakins early on, So it might be that a cinematographer or something is mentioned next, or, I don't know. I'll tell you what I was even thinking about. Lindy Hemming had something quite sniffy to say about Amazon and saying that she'd done her last. And I wonder if she's sorry, there's a little fly. I wonder if she's you know,
yeah,
that looks a little bit silly now, and I don't know, a bit of a shame for the way that's ended. But yeah, I think there might be another couple of announcements before Bond, but it might not be too
oh,
long. As you say, Tom, that's the main thing that people are bothered about. I'm sure I was somewhere else. It might have been at church or something like that. As soon as it's said that you're a Bond fan, the first thing they ask is, "Oh, who's going to be the next Bond?"
yeah,
Not,
Yeah.
if I were to say, "Well, Denis Villeneuve's just been announced as the new director and
Yeah.
Stephen Knight's the new writer," blank looks. But for us, and for we know how important a director and a writer are for this thing. You can cast who you like, but if you've not got a good writer, as we said at the start,
yeah,
you're in trouble.
The four names that we've got so far, the two producers, Villeneuve and Stephen Knight, they're nothing to do with the arguments with Barbara Broccoli and all that Variety article. And Lindy Hemming will be talking about stuff like that, I think, to be fair to her.
Mm.
That's sort of back with the Amazon executives and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
No, not forget all that now because they're not in charge. These people are in charge of doing this film, and this is just the film. Remember, there will be other marketing stuff going on in the background, and there's the Road to a Million, which Barbara and Michael, of course, had their blessing. So yeah, I think we need to just sort of. I think people are gradually having to accept those people who didn't like it that this is actually going to be exactly what we want. I mean,
yeah.
it come back to haunt us, couldn't it, in a few months? But like I've said to you guys, I just can't picture like Denis Villeneuve's first critically lambasted film. I just can't picture that. I can't picture with the way it's going at the moment, the momentum they've got. That at very least, they know exactly what they're doing. I think.
Lindy Hemming before. I think did Debbie Williams also have a few snipes on her way out, maybe, about the Amazon setup. But which reminded me that really, the casting director, whoever that is, we're not going to be told who that is. That's not going to be unveiled. But behind the scenes, they will be perhaps the next biggest appointment, or this
Yeah.
perhaps an appointment that's already been made. And since we're talking about James, the actual actor who's going to play James Bond, that unveiling. Like I say, Rob, I was kind of wondering, in the writing process, when you're writing, you picture your lead character, and he was asked in this interview if Stephen Knight was asked in the interview, do you know who's going to play 007? And all he said was, that is a very, very good question and one I can't give you the answer to, which is
Not no.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's definitely
yeah.
not no, is it?
So if you've got a writer, and Rob, maybe if I come to you first, having an idea of who Bond is is surely fairly significant. Whether it's a young Bond, his age, like whether charm is his strength, or whether being muscular is his strength, or whatever.
Mm.
As a writer, do you think Stephen Knight has to know who Bond is before he puts
Yeah.
pen to paper?
I think more than anything, he has to establish, like the four people that you've mentioned have to establish what the direction going forward is and what time period this is set in.
Yeah,
I think, that's another big question. I've got to be honest, I can only guess. I've never written for a big IP, although, Lord knows I'd like to. But I've never written like for the screen either, apart from a series of awful screenplays that will never see the light of day. But in novels, right, I never have a face in mind when I'm writing a character, so I don't know what like anyone looks like at all. It's like blurred. Like the
yeah,
face is blurred. I know more about height and build and like hair, possibly, but I don't know anything from the face. So I think it would add to the challenge greatly to actually know that, to know exactly who your character is going to look like. But I think when it's something like this, and the stakes are so high here as well. I tend to think that any information is good information, So if you do know, like you say, you do know who it is, and you've been able to watch them in things before, provided it's not a complete unknown, then you'll be able to cater, like you say. The script can have leanings towards their strengths and get the best out of what you've got, which seems to be, like with again with so much on the line, that seems to be prudent almost to do so. I actually do think that means that Brill knows who it is. Um,
Knight.
no, I did it. I actually did do it, didn't I? Yeah, thank you.
Brill knows as well, but
Brill probably knows as well.
Pascal approached him first.
Yeah. Um, but no, I mean it's so exciting. It's genuinely exciting. But I think they need to sort out this Bond. Where is Bond in his journey? As in, where is he in his career? Are we going to go down the old route? And I hope, my hope would be that they don't. I'd love to see an established Bond. A Bond who's actually absolutely in the prime of his life. I don't want to see a knackered old dog, new tricks Bond, or I don't want to see Bond finding himself again. There is obviously room to do that, I think, because we are hoping to restart this entire franchise in a way, aren't we? So I'm not all against it, but I would love to see a thriving James Bond in his prime. Um, so once we've established that, you can then start to go, right, well, where do we want to see this guy? What do we want to see him up against? I think then as well, you've got to look at um, how contemporary it is. If it's set in the year that it's supposed to come out. So let's pick 2028, for example. So what will be on the tip of everyone's tongue in 2028 that can make this extremely current? Bond movies always had a very good knack of this, of making them seem well, almost too ahead of their time at times, but they were also very current. So with leading times like this one, where you've still got 3 years before that, what's going to be the current thing? And you've got to sort of like aim ahead a little bit and try to head trends off at the pass. Now, I actually think that that's such a fool's errand as well, and it certainly is in the book world. If you try to guess what is coming next, or what will be the next, girl on the train or whatever, you invariably come unstuck. So you've really got to stick with what you think, and is the story you want to write, and hope that the writing sparkles enough because you're really into it and you're really enjoying it. Now, I think with this, they've all spoken about how excited they are to be involved. So, and what an opportunity is. So I don't see any of that being a problem whatsoever. Yeah, whether I do think they'll know. I don't think they'll rely too much on, like I don't think Stephen Knight will be ringing up this actor, whoever it is, and going, "I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think?" That kind of thing. I think those decisions will be between himself and Villeneuve and the producers, because obviously the producers have got to assemble the moving parts to allow the director and writer to put their visions together. So those are decisions for someone else entirely. But I think it would be impossible if you knew who that person was, not to write it with them in mind. I'm sorry, that's a really rambling
No,
answer,
no,
which
no.
covers all sorts of different things. But it really is, like it's just, when I think about it, it's pure kid in a candy store stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like and that's what Stephen Knight seems to be alluding to, is like when you get the call and you come up with some ideas and then you throw those ideas to them and then they go, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let's go with it. You're like, oh, like,
Yeah.
what? And then so I'm just imagining all the way through this. I've just been imagining him sat at home, like writing scenes for the new Bond film, writing lines for the new James Bond. And I just can't get over how exciting that is. Like you are going to shape, you know, people's feelings and their life experiences, because that's what James Bond has been attached to so many big life moments for me. Like you're going to shape that for people in your own image. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing what he'll be doing at the moment. Like writing like on Final Draft or whatever, like James Bond, and then click return, then line of dialogue. Like, what do I write here? Because you're writing dialogue for James Bond.
Yeah.
Dear, dear, dear. It is pinch yourself stuff.
So excited.
I'm so excited about it, and also really excited for him because like that, the body of work over such a significant length of career as well. This is like getting your flowers, isn't it? Like you deserve this. You really deserve this. So to be recognised by your peers, but not like as being put out to pasture. Like this isn't like winning a lifetime achievement award for something, when you possibly should have won the main award many times over, that kind of thing. This is like being recognized as the top in your field still. And so exciting. Sorry, a real guttural weird noise of excitement. But it's just great. It's just great.
One thing I've realised, another thing that not been mentioned, all these four people, they're all late 50s,
Yeah.
60s. They're all, you know, over the hill in terms of what certain people would think.
Yeah.
But actually, they're all really experienced, aren't they? They're all actually very, very experienced at their individual jobs. They're all very collaborative. Like we said, Stephen Knight's done his own stuff. He's co-written the odd thing with other people, and of course, he's directed some of his own scripts. He's done all the different TV, comedy, film. Denis Villeneuve has co-written stuff, but he's also sometimes not written anything and then directed it. And he's probably the least experienced of the four of them. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
these are no
Yeah.
appointments saying, well, let's get, like the Marvel do. We have to have a director who's never had a film that's had a budget of, 20 million or something. We're gonna have to because we're in charge. The producers are basically telling them what to do. This is like we want to get on with this. We don't have time to be creating a dynasty of millions of. We're not creating millions of characters, millions of spin-offs like Marvel. We don't have to do that. We're just concentrating on the film for now, and that is in the hands of people who know what they're doing. Give them creative control, and yeah, I think Villeneuve can put the polish on whatever. If it's Stephen Knight's original idea, Villeneuve can then let that grow. So, like Rob's been saying, if Stephen Knight didn't know who it was when he was pitching and all that, which he probably didn't, let's be honest, Villeneuve can add color to the characters that he's creating, and he's different. They're both very, very experienced, but they've not worked together before. And I know they might have had some characters and actors they've worked with before on different projects, but the, you're going from someone who's very international, the director, to a very British person, Stephen Knight. Like Tom Hardy for some reason has not been mentioned, has he? His odds should be. I don't think that's going to happen, but those kind of gritty things he's, Taboo, Christmas Carol, those sort of things he's done with them. That that's I don't know that can marry up with what Denis Villeneuve would like to do as well. I think, but that
Mm.
doesn't mean I think it's going to be extremely dark and depressing like they were.
We're just going to hear from John Kell. Like I said, John couldn't be here tonight, but he recorded his thoughts for us to watch, for us to enjoy. So we're just going to hand over to John for just a period now.
Hi guys, John here. Sorry I couldn't get on the podcast to talk about Stephen Knight, but I thought I'd just give a quick update on my thoughts on this casting. I just think that when Amazon was announced at the start of the year, I was cautiously optimistic, very open-minded over this Amazon taking over. I was thinking it's better than nothing, because we'd heard no news whatsoever from Eon. But one of the main fears that people were having were that Bond would become Americanized with Amazon. And what we have seen throughout the months, we've seen firstly through the appointment of David Heyman and Amy Pascal. Okay, Amy Pascal is American, but you have got established British producer, and both people very, very well regarded in the film industry and know what they're doing. Then you get Denis Villeneuve, one of the biggest directors in cinema at this time. And now you've got Stephen Knight, one of the greatest British screenwriters of this generation. How can we not be excited for Bond 26? It's like Amazon are putting together, like on FIFA, when you get your ultimate team, like a World 11, they're getting together the best people and putting them all together in a fantasy league to create Bond 26. They understand that Bond is so massive, and they are going to take it right back to the top. The appointment of Stephen Knight as the screenwriter, for me personally, is the most significant appointment yet. And the reason why I think that is that Denis Villeneuve, right, is a world-class director. He's unbelievable. But in previous Bond films over the last few years, we have had, probably not a Denis Villeneuve level, but we've had a very, very, very good directors who've produced some brilliant moments in Bond films, predominantly over the Craig era. But it's been let down by some of the writing from Purvis and Wade and others. Now we've got a world-class director and a world-class screenwriter. And Stephen Knight has been involved in writing for many, many, many years. He has obviously done stuff like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which, you know, the concept of that game, wow, and the phenomenon that became not just in England but all across the world, to some of my absolute favourite films. Eastern Promises, I remember when I first watched that, I was blown away, and the story is so integral to that. When my brother said, Stephen Knight, I only know him from Peaky Blinders, I said, Eastern Promises, and his face was like, oh my word, if this guy who wrote Eastern Promises is involved in Bond, we're in for a good time. I have a running joke with my friend from school about the film Locke. I've never seen Locke, and my mate, who is obsessed with Locke, has continually said for years, you've got to watch Locke, it's 80 minutes, it's just Tom Hardy in a car, speaking it as a Welshman, you've got to watch it, it's such an easy watch. And it's kind of become like this on-off thing with me and him saying, well, I'm not going to watch it. And it's just out of principle, me being stubborn, because I don't want to watch this, because considering how much he's continually said, I've got to watch it. When the news broke about Stephen Knight, the first thing I looked on my phone was this message that just said, well, you've got to watch Locke now. And I can tell you, in the next 2 weeks, I will be watching Locke, because I need to see this. But the main thing that he's going to be most well known for is Peaky Blinders, and this is what I can base it mainly off, and I am very excited about. The storytelling throughout Peaky Blinders is excellent. It's grounded, yet it's stylish. It has you rooting for your characters, which I think is a very significant problem that I've found with the recent Bond era, is that I'm not really rooting for my protagonist. And in Peaky Blinders, someone like Tommy Shelby is, he's an antagonist most definitely, and yet you root for him, and that's because of yes, the performance, but also how the character is written. And I think if we can have that kind of skilled level at writing James Bond, we're going to have a protagonist who we are all on board for, whilst also maybe being able to create those sympathetic traits that people want to see in terms of Bond's humanity and his vulnerability. But what excites me most about Stephen Knight writing a Bond film is how he writes villains. One of Peaky Blinders' greatest strengths was, especially in the first 4 series, the villains that he wrote were fantastic. The characters such as Sam Neill's character, and then obviously Tom Hardy's character, Alfie Solomons, who is such a brilliant character. There is motivation behind what these characters do, but they do it mainly because they are just pure evil as well, and there is a lust for power. And I think that has been lost in the Bond era, because what we've moved away from is the megalomaniacs. We have moved towards trying to think of motivation on a personal level against Bond, and it's made the world smaller. And what you're getting with someone like Stephen Knight is somebody who can bring personal motivation, but can still bring a world level, can still bring someone outright as he is bad, they are bad. And that will bring us world-class villains again. As the news just keeps coming through, I'm just getting more and more excited. We've got great producers of big franchises. We've got world-class directors. We've got world-class scriptwriters. Bond fans, start buzzing. It's the momentum is kicking in. What's next? Well, it's got to be the main man, hasn't it? Surely we're going to be hearing who James Bond is next. Strap in, because this is just gaining momentum, and it's so exciting. What brilliant news that Stephen Knight is the new Bond screenwriter.
Like I often do, I like to bring it back to the quote, the stuff that we do know, the stuff that has been officially said. And I'll just go back to this section, because this is perhaps the one that gives you the biggest buzz. I'm hoping that, so this is what Steve and I said, I'm hoping that being a Bond fan for so many years, yes. I'm hoping that being a Bond fan for so many years, it will be imbued into me, and I'll be able to produce something that's the same, but different and better, stronger and bolder, he added. I've said it on previous episodes with regard to previous appointments, but it always makes such a difference to know that they're a Bond fan. And not a secret Bond fan, but someone who's proud and happy to say that they're a Bond fan. They've been given the chance to give a quote, they've been given an interview, they've been given a moment, and they have not shied away from saying that they love James Bond. Villeneuve did it, and now the writer himself is saying that he's a Bond fan. And we've talked about his age, he's 66 years old, so his experience of Bond isn't going to be just recent Bond. This guy is going to have a really wealthy experience of Bond through the decades. So Bond will have been with him all his life, which is very exciting. And that's why he says, he's hope it's going to be imbued in him, and it will kind of come out on the page. And then, as well as that, he's talked about this ambition of it being the same. And we spoke about this briefly a while ago. Being the same but different. And better, that's quite interesting, stronger and bolder. So for us guys, we've had our episode, talking about non-negotiables. We are, Bond fans, and there are things that are so familiar to us as Bond fans that we want, because they're like comfort zone things, the things that we want to see in Bond, the things that we hope to see and almost expect to see. So he's kind of given a nod to that, whereas he wants Bond to feel the same. He wants it to feel like it is a Bond film. Because clearly there he's indicating that he wants Bond fans to feel like it belongs to them as well. He's not done what some other people might have done and said, we're moving in a totally different new direction. We're taking Bond into the new century and, anything like that. He said that he wants it to feel the same, which is important. But like all the other films it's the same but different. There always has to be a difference. And like I've kind of talked about, and I think Math also mentioned that there is going to be a lot of different now. And the way this information is being released to us bit by bit, I'm kind of acclimatizing and getting prepared for that sense of difference. This, I think, Bond 26 will be different. And as much as I'm hope to see some of those same tropes, this will be a new portrayal of Bond. This will be a new vision, it'll come at it with a different edge, a different angle. And that is exciting. And also, that is what will probably propel it into another reign of decades long films and is what's needed. So the same but different. Yeah, and then this bit and better. I can't figure out why he said that other than to say, yeah, I mean, I won't speculate. And then stronger and bolder. I think, these are exciting words he's using. We've talked about how like the casting of Bond will be released and the potential it has to, whether it's an image or a video or whatever, how big it is. And we've talked about in our marketing episode, having Amazon behind you is surely the biggest thing when it comes to marketing, and when it comes to putting it out there. But I love this that when it comes to the writing, it's going to be stronger and bolder as well. There is even that ambition, that desire in the story as well, which is really exciting. So going back to that, it's the same but different and better, stronger and bolder. Every bit of that is really interesting, and you could really kind of think about it because there's some really, I think those are all really interesting words to use. That's where I am. I'm very excited about all the new stuff that's coming our way and how new it all feels. We have a writer, Stephen Knight. He's a Bond fan. He seems very, very up for it.
When he mentioned the whole him saying, it's going to be, bigger, bolder, it reminds me of those, whether it's Thunderball on Her Majesty's Spy Who Loved Me, the posters that say Bond,
Yeah.
bigger, better. It reminds me of that actually this is what we should be attaining. You're trying to aim for is that, yes, we've had what's gone before. Let's not forget that. But if you look at the trajectory of the Bond series, it did go from small scale and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we had some changes. But they're all Bond films, and they all sit in that. And I really do hope that that's what he means. It's not like to say that what's gone, in the past isn't very good or anything. He's just saying, look, we can do more with this. It's still Bond, but I've got ideas. I want to sort of do that. I want to stretch it, this, that, and that's what makes me really excited about this sort of appointment. I think he's, like I say, he's a writer of tremendous sort of skill and such a strong background and really prolific as well. And that's the main thing, is someone who's able to write consistently over a set period of time. That takes real skill to write that, write episode after episode, work on different things at the same time. And I think that he clearly, he has the base and the sort of, the craft to do something really interesting. And I think, tied with the producers, with the new, with the director, it's just so exciting to think that what actually they could do that. And I keep coming back to the fact that this all comes from this love of this character and the world. And what better place do we need to be in to have, high, really kind of top level writers, directors and producers who've worked on massive franchises. Who this isn't, they're not going to take this, lightly. They are coming at it from this. We are now custodians of this, and we want to make the best thing that we possibly can, and not just like, well, we've just got, Amazon can write whatever check they want, and we'll just churn out any old rubbish because it's, it'll probably just fall into streaming. There's none of that. It's like, this is really important for us, and we are 100% behind it, and we want to make, like say, something that will be remembered and will mean that actually we can carry on making these films for another 30, 40 years or whatever it is. So I think he's a really, really great and a smart choice as well. Again, I think, the producers have really kind of have really given it thought and thought, actually, what sort of directors do we want? What writers do we want? And I think, again, if you were looking at solid, writers who sort of understand the craft, he's in that. He's not being plucked out of obscurity. He's established, and like I say, experience is the word that, like I say, that is really kind of standing out with everyone involved in that, and that makes me feel really confident that actually, whatever happens, the film is coming from a place of love, and I think that's, a brilliant place to be, really.
Just agree with everything I've heard there, Chris. I totally agree with everything. And I realise that every time that I try to answer a question tonight, I've gone back to how excited I am about it. So I don't, I don't want to, there's nothing further really that I would like to add. I just think it's absolutely brilliant for all the reasons that we've discussed. And I just keep thinking again about how much better this has gone than people expected from this point, like the commercialization of this or whatever. I think people were expecting by this point, perhaps never mind having the announcement of the director and the writer and having done so well with those two things, but they were thinking, I don't know, like um major Bond announcement, Mountain Dew is the official drinks partner of the next James Bond film, that kind of thing. I think that's what they were expecting, and I'm just so glad that we're all being proven wrong, and that they're making such great appointments who are going about their business in such a classy way. Everyone has got the pedigree was established. They're only adding to the pedigree now and adding different weights and layers to just how good this can be. They're not in this for a cash grab. None of these people are in this for a cash grab. This is going to be setting up James Bond for the future. And if they get it right, which, who knows? And it will be another one of those things where a lot of it will be down to taste as well. They're certainly making a jolly good go of it, aren't they? So yeah, I'm really, really impressed and really excited and really happy.
Harder, better, stronger, faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think with this, I mean, there's loads of thoughts run through your head, aren't there, as you're going through it. As we have to realize, Amazon are pretty much the biggest company in the world, aren't they, in terms of their reach, their global reach. So when you do go on your app or whatever to buy something, I'm hoping there'll be Bond adverts there. This is what I want to see. Bond's name everywhere. In terms of just going back to the appointments again, particularly Stephen Knight and Denis Villeneuve, with the amount of stuff he's got coming. Was it Cleopatra and all this stuff he wants to do. If you want something doing, ask a busy person.
Yeah.
Goodness me, it couldn't apply more to Stephen Knight particularly. I can't. If you look at the stuff he's doing, it's just getting more and more prolific. So I do think everyone, again, the instant reaction was, "Oh, right, June 3, forget it. That's another few years wait." I'm not so sure, because I think once the shoot's done, Stephen Knight will be getting on with this. They'll have already started this sort of stuff. And I think this will be Amazon. We're not paying them $1 billion just for the creative control, just to wait for these people to get what they're doing. Denis Villeneuve will want to get on with it. He'll be well excited at this. Stephen Knight will be absolute, like Rob says, this is like the ultimate giving him flowers. He'll want to get on with this, and he must be a naturally prolific writer anyway. So I'm sure he's going through that already. So I do think, yeah, it's just surprising us all. It's a new and exciting, and also I think I know we know so little now, but I am impressed with. It's a gamble. You could say it's worth all those billions because it's a surefire hit, James Bond. It's worth it, and all the legacy and the residuals and all that sort of stuff, the guaranteed money. But do they need to take this on? It's such a massive amount of money, even for them to spend. A bit like Jim Ratcliffe going into United. It's not, he doesn't need to do this. It sounds brilliant to own United, but goodness me, there's a lot of risk involved with this. These Amazon don't need to do this, and they don't need to do it like this. So I'm really excited that what they've got at the moment is strong leadership. I mean, I keep saying we love Barbara and Michael, but strong leadership isn't necessarily just doing it how we've always done and keeping these people doing that. And strong leadership isn't always no Danny Boyle, no to you, no to these people. Sometimes it is actually we need a good shake up here, and that's a very good idea. And I'm going to put trust in you to do that. But with the joy of this is everyone's in it for the first time. So if you get respected producers, which they are, you get a respected director, a respected writer. These people have met before. Come on, they're not all novices. They'll know each other, and they'll be wanting to help each other along. And they know what a big, well, what an exciting risk it all is. And I'm even thinking now maybe there's more chance of they can get away with a lesser known actors for Bond because they've got such an experienced team around them who will guide this person through. They've got all Amazon's marketing things to sell the actor. So yeah, I do think it's they've basically gone into our minds, haven't they? And thought this is how we should do it. We don't know, we didn't really know this was how we wanted it done. And it's the speed as well. I do think the speed is catching people out. And I'm not in the mindset now where I'm still getting excited. I'm still getting shocked by it. I'm not now thinking, oh, come on, when's the next announcement? I know that when the next announcement hits, no one will have mentioned it. It'll just come out casually and we'll all be way more excited than if it had leaked or anything like that. So, yeah, this is a really good time to be a Bond fan because this reignites your love for the other films, doesn't it, as well, I think, and the books
Yeah.
and everything. You get into it and you go to these, Bond events with a bit more excitement, not oh, this is like a celebration of the past. No, no, this is an ongoing thing. The legacy's been protected and it'll be continued now.
With his comments about it being better and bolder and everything, I think that's like a sort of statement of ambition, People don't come into a new role, a high profile role, and say, I want to keep it about the same, or, it's good sort of fighting talk. It's brilliant, but it's still great to hear it. On that theme, I really think that this could be the case that this is bigger and bolder and better than we've been having. Where do I start, or am I just repeating myself? I'm just so excited, and I do think the sky really is the limit with the potential here. Again, I said this before when we were thinking about what the next Bond film's gonna be like and look like and who they're gonna get. You're always thinking about it with the limitations of Eon, and I don't want to be too disrespectful or whatever, but those limitations are gone. Everything that we've seen so far is Amazon and the people, the producers, not doing anything recklessly. As Tom says, they're doing everything like brilliantly, and as we would like to see it done. We might possibly have had different ideas of a director or writer in our minds, but you can't argue that the appointments are incredibly solid. While the end products might not be what everyone wants, and it's almost impossible to please everyone, it's very it seems more unlikely than not that this won't be a big film that is well received and that lots of people like and lots of people go to see. With it being almost this blank canvas, I am preparing myself, and I'm not sure, they'll want to make it like a traditional Bond film, traditional action adventure. There might be some things they don't include that I would like them to have included, or some things that they might include that I maybe wouldn't have done, or everything. But I would rather it be where we are for sure than where we were. And just bring it back to Stephen Knight, I think it's in some ways it's a bold appointment because it's not a name that was mentioned. He's 65 or something like that. Um, it's not an edgy appointment. It's just a really good, strong, solid, sensible but exciting appointment. And yeah, as Tom says, the sort of frequency of the announcements, how they're done, the fact that you didn't necessarily think that they were coming, is just perfect for me. And exactly, in a few weeks' time, there might well be something. Chances are there might be something else that's announced, and it's like, oh yeah, the next piece of the jigsaw, and doing these episodes has really helped with this, and I think it's worked so well that we're now into this period where official news is happening. rather than, you know, we start with the speculation where we're at, and then the landscape changes, and then now we're here. To look back is amazing, but there's so much to look forward to.
Amazing, guys. Every episode of this just gets more and more exciting because we have our own way of receiving the news, you know, and like, you know, when this news came out, it's, you know, a case of looking up Stephen Knight, the things you've seen, the things you've not seen. We respond to all things individually, but then to come together and talk about it tonight and have the thoughts of Steve and John sent in as well. It's so good just to generate the excitement and the positivity as well, because and this, I don't think this is false excitement either. I think they are giving us stuff that we have every reason to have good faith and believe that these are the people. There's, like Matt said, it's bold, but not in a edgy kind of way. It's just really, really exciting. And whatever the next episode is, I'm sure we'll only gain in positivity and excitement. So thank you for listening again and watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to keep dreaming of Bond 26, but more and more it's becoming less of a dream and it's becoming more of a reality now because we have a writer. And as Rob said, whilst we've been chatting away, he's probably been in his study or his writing room, whatever, penning the lines of James Bond 007 that we're going to see on the big screen. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and we can't wait to keep going with this series. Ta-ra.